You're listening to WOWD-LP Takoma Park, and this is the Thought Bowl. And I'm flying solo today because my usual co-host, Heather, is out in Texas at her daughter's graduation, graduating from, I think, some Texas school. Texas Austin, maybe? I think it's Texas Austin. Or University of Texas, one of those fine Texas educational institutions. So our guest today is Allan Sidley. Say hello to the radio world, Allan.
What's going on, radio world? How we doing?
All right. And Allan is a comedian, and in addition to being a comedian, he also runs comedy rooms. Is that the correct term? Running a comedy room, or?
I think so. Some people like to say the word producer, but I don't know if that's actually correct. So room runner, promoter, but those also sound kind of sleazy, so I prefer producer.
Producer, yeah. Producer sounds more like more prestige.
Exactly.
Than Slimeball. And so a lot of people make their way to the D.C. metro area, but you've kind of been in the area most of your life, haven't you?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in Vienna, Tyson's Corner area. You know, I'm a local guy. I went to Westboro Elementary, Kilmer Middle School, Marshall High School. Then eventually found my way to Virginia Tech. Went there, did a little bit of schooling there, studied some business, IT stuff, and then the jobs that I found were back in the area. So actually I just bounced back home. My first job was in Reston, and then slowly migrated out to D.C., and then I slowly came back.
Oh, okay. And so you were a business major at Virginia Tech?
Yeah, basically it's like technically called like business information systems. It's kind of just like the easier engineering program. Mm-hmm. So
it's not like the stockbroker hedge fund side of the Wall Street side of.
No investment banking here, just like using computers to solve business problems, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It was like a really prestigious degree. There were a lot of, I came out, had a decent amount of offers, but at the end of the day, it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And when did you graduate from college? What year was this?
2011.
Oh, okay. So that's, well, you're a lot younger than I thought you were. I thought you were an old man like me.
Old soul. That's what it is.
And where are your parents from?
So my mom was from Illinois, Chicago area, probably some neighborhood that's not that nice anymore. I can't remember the exact name of it. Mm-hmm. And then my dad was raised in the D.C. area.
Oh, okay.
He went to like Gonzaga, Catholic.
Oh, okay. And we were talking off the air about we have similar Catholic and Jewish combinations.
Yes.
On our side of the family. And so you have the same where your mother's Jewish, correct?
Right.
And your father was Catholic.
Yeah, that's correct.
Was he Italian, Irish?
Irish, but not like super staunch like Irish. Like he didn't look Irish.
How much alcohol did he consume?
Not much. Cigarettes were his vice.
Oh,
I think so.
Okay.
Oh man.
But he was born in, and his parents were born in Ireland or born in D.C.?
That I actually don't know.
Oh, okay.
I should do one of those like Ancestry.com things. Mm-hmm. It's on my bucket list. It just keeps, falling to the next week.
Oh, yeah. I recently did mine. I did mine about a year ago, and I've literally found like thousands and thousands of relatives from all over, And they're pretty good at telling you like, oh, this person could possibly be your fourth cousin.
Nice.
So they're really good at like taking your DNA and storing it in a database and keeping it forever. And I don't know what they do with it, but
they're gonna clone you one day, Pete.
That would be awesome. They could have already cloned me, and like one day I'll just like walk into my clone like on the street one day.
I actually thought I saw my clone like last week. I was actually walking to one of my shows on Thursday. And so I was walking from the parking garage going towards the venue. This is at Tyson's Beer Garden. I was walking that way, and it's right next to the Greensboro Metro, and there was somebody who was walking towards the Metro, and I was going behind him, but like, just tall, bald dude with a beard, kind of wore like a similar shirt that I was wearing. Like it was one of those moments, one of those like glitches in the Matrix where I didn't really believe. I tried to look around, see if anyone else can give me confirmation. Nobody was there. Maybe I'll see him again. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it is your clone.
But it was like I had a weird feeling when I saw him.
Like a deja vu, or
it wasn't like a deja vu, but it was just like, I need to know more, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. I wonder if he felt the same. He's probably saying this. He's probably having the same conversation right now.
But it wasn't like an alarming feeling, you know. It actually felt pretty normal. It was just like, I have questions.
Oh, okay. Hey, I've also noticed that people that look alike sound alike also.
Yeah.
So you could have started up a conversation with him, and he could have sounded exactly.
That would freak me out, man.
He could have sounded exactly like you. So you're a. How long have you been doing stand-up?
Been doing stand-up for about 3 years. I think I'm hitting the 3-year mark.
Oh, okay.
Soon. Yeah.
And do you remember the first time you went on stage?
I do. Yeah, it was terrible. So there was this show over in Clarendon at Re-Raws that was like had a pretty steady audience going. You know, it was a pretty like well-produced show. And it was the first time I was doing it. I had all these like, you know, pretty explicit jokes because that's like the stuff you watch growing up. You hear people saying like bad words and cursing all the time.
Right.
So you're thinking to yourself like, that's what I got to do. And I go up there, and it was like one of the cringiest experiences ever. I only had 3 minutes on stage, and it was like I got on stage and just felt like something was wrong. You know?
Wow.
And then I come to know that I was actually like performing in the same vein, the same night as like some like semi-professionals and professionals. So it was just like it was kind of overwhelming to just be that kid that everybody forgot about. You know.
Right. Right. And how did you recover from it? Or like how many days did you stew in like not having a good set?
You know,
first time.
For some reason, it didn't actually bother me that much. It was just like, I think it's time to go to the drawing board. I tried using an analogy one time. There was like, I thought that comedy was going to be basketball, and I got up on stage and realized it was soccer. People were kicking the ball, and I was just like, okay, now I got to learn how to play soccer.
Right.
So I didn't feel... I get more upset about shows these days than I did 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Why do you think that is?
Because my expectations are enormous.
Higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does if you have a bad set now, is the recovery time for that? Does that take a little bit longer?
I mean, I'm like a really sensitive dude, so it usually takes me like maybe 24 hours. I try not to think about it too much, but there's like, I think what it is, man, is just like when you're on stage and that like discomfort sits in.
Right.
You just kind of keep feeling that experience. None of it matters, right? I know it doesn't matter. Nobody cares the next day, next week. I don't like say anything too inappropriate to get people to leave, but like that moment when you're just like, this doesn't feel right, that's too strong. Yeah.
Can you usually rationalize it as, oh, I had 2 days ago I had a fantastic set, and it's, every 10 times I might have a set that doesn't go as good? Or is it really you take it to heart and you just have to feel like
I just have to beat myself up for the next 24 hours? No, I mean it's something that I know it. I definitely very much know it rationally. It's similar like metaphor to baseball, right? You're going to strike out more than you hit home runs, more than you get on base. But the feelings that go into it, it's how I tell most people, it's like you only feel like as confident or as funny as your last set.
Right.
So like for instance, this past weekend I did a show on Mother's Day. It was like at the Draft House DC. I featured. I did a clean set, and I felt awesome about it. It was like it went really well. And then like Monday, I turned around at my own open mic, and I felt like I laid an egg, and it was like we're back to square one. At least that's how it feels in that day.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good way.
I think most artists feel that way too, right? It's you're only as good as your last show.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I did stand up for a while, but I did it like before like social media.
Okay.
Before Facebook and before anything. And I felt fine about...
How old are you, Pete?
I know. I'll be 48 in July.
Damn, dude. Still holding it together, though.
Yeah. I still look like I'm in my mid-30s. So I did it before social media and everything, and it felt like, okay, I'm doing my thing. And that was the only thing I was worried about.
Yeah.
But it seemed like once Facebook and Twitter came out, I was like so worried about what everyone else was doing.
Right.
That it kind of like messed up my mind, and I just like kind of like lost
your mojo there.
Yeah, I lost my mojo, and I started and stopped, like wouldn't do it for like 2 or 3 years, then would like do it for like a year or two and stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, like one of the toughest things is, so say you're doing it on and off, right? And then, most cases you're going up and like, you're like either not that experience at that point, or B, you're doing it for your like average open mic night. That's
Right,
not going
right.
to be a very attentive audience. So then
Yeah.
you either have, even if it's not pressure, you have all this preparation going into like that 5 minutes that you're going to be on stage for those 4 people that are not really paying attention.
Right, right.
And that's actually how I sort of got into putting on more of my own shows, where I was like, I was having such a tough time, like, just like mentally dealing with the average show that I was being on, where I was like, I've put on shows before. I feel like I could potentially do a better job, get some, more bodies in the door and have a better show. And then that would help me grow as a performer, because I could at least get that consistent, average of being able to engage some people.
Right, right. So you felt like you could control some of the parameters a little bit more if you were putting on this show.
Yeah, exactly.
And who were some of the comedians that inspired you to want to do stand up?
See, that's always such a weird question for me, because I love stand-up and I love watching stand-up, right? So I guess if I had to answer that, I would probably say, like, in high school, like, Dave Chappelle was the man, right? He was putting out those, or for me in high school.
Not for me. For me, it was Red Buttons and Lenny Bruce.
But it was like, he was killing it with the Chappelle show. He was putting out albums, and it wasn't like comedy that I was going to do, but I was always laughing and enjoying it. But,
right.
I feel like I've always been a musician at heart without being able to have like the musical ability, where, the people who are talking about putting yourself out there and like dealing with those challenges and all the, culmination of what kind of just goes on in your everyday life, plus like your life as someone who's a performer. I always felt like that relates to me much more, and like the struggles that I go through versus like somebody getting on stage and riffing about their parents.
Huh. And why do you think you feel? Because you kind of grew up in a musical. A lot of your relatives are.
Right.
Do you think that they kind of instilled the whole performing mentality in you?
I don't know. I don't know if I figured it out yet, to be honest. But it's just, somebody relates to you in a comedy set. It just feels different. It doesn't move me as much as the music does. I think that's it.
Huh.
Yeah.
But
I'm weird. So
you never played an instrument though, or?
I played a little bit growing up. I mean, I played bass when I was little, but then I gave up because, by 6th grade I had too much going on.
Oh yeah, by 6th grade it's like the world is.
It's like, between sports and these spelling bees, I can't keep it going.
I'm totally like stressing out, man. I need a juice box. I need some.
And then,
so you stopped it. Oh wow, that's.
Well, then I also played. For some reason, I wanted to get into band. I went to one like live band performance when I was in elementary school, and I thought it was super cool. So I played the euphonium.
What
randomly.
is that?
It's like a baritone, the smaller tuba.
Oh, okay.
So same, bass clef, whatever. But I don't know exactly how I fell onto it, but it was like they needed someone to do it, and I was the guy. And then I got like pretty good at it, and then. By the time I was in high school and a freshman, I got put into the top band, and then I stopped practicing, and it was really hard to like play those songs if you never practice. Like that was when the difficulty and the skill that went into it. It'd be like me and this guy Jay Small I used to sit next to, and we would just try to BS our way through a thing. There was uncomfortable moments, man.
Was there like some
when the
playing
orchestra...
when you're supposed to be playing, kind of?
No, but it's just the patterns were too hard, or we would go. Up some like really high scales and go back, and can't remember it too well. I mean, I remember like the skeleton of it, but just I guess it was like the moments where the conductor or teacher would like call out specific groups to play, and it would be like, all right, brass section, trombones, and Alan and Jay play.
Oh no!
Like, oh man!
That was the same way with the flute, and like. In like I think like 6th or 7th grade.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be, a famous flute player.
Really?
Like the guy
you look like a saxophone guy. You got so much swag, Pete.
But I was terrible at it, and it was the same thing. It was I would fake my way, then like the conductor would like call me out to play by myself, and was like, "Oh, I got nothing for you." So I was really turned off from music up until like 17.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, it's amazing how like one particular bad experience can kind of turn you off, or
that's life right there in a nutshell, man.
that's for real right there. So you said David Chappelle is one of your heroes.
Yeah.
And yeah, one thing I was always amazed about Chappelle is the way he crafted a joke. Like I'm sure you heard his Sesame Street. What was the guy who lived in a can?
Yeah, Oscar the Crowd.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most well constructed jokes ever,
Right?
ever told. It's like some social observation, some exaggeration, some character play. It's I think you could teach a class just around that particular joke of his.
Yeah, no, it's pretty perfect, man. Yeah, I'd say besides Chappelle, I mean, just like some of the older greats, like obviously everybody loves Mitch. Mitch was a fun guy to watch and listen. R.I.P. And then yeah, I'm always listening to, I guess for newer age, even though I don't do his type. I mean, Jesselnick's just so fun to listen to.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
he's really quick and he's really brutal and quick and really...
he just his commitment level and his style just he goes all the way, and I respect that.
Oh yeah. And he writes for Jimmy Fallon.
Okay.
And it's bizarre. He says but only and he's someone that can literally write 300 jokes.
Right.
But he says they'll only use a quarter of those because it kind of has to fit into what Jimmy is as a person.
Yeah.
So, but he's totally fine. He's like, if I write 100 jokes and they only use 20, that's perfectly fine. I'm still getting paid to write those.
Exactly.
I'm still getting paid to write those 20 jokes.
Now the problem is and this just happens, as a new comedian or whatever. A lot of people love Jesselnick so much they want to imitate him right out of the gate, and that's hard to do.
Oh yeah, because it's like you said, it's a commitment to. They're not all one-liners, but they're all relatively. He does a lot of material, I guess material per minute. He does a lot.
Right.
And his face stays the same, his emotion stays the same, and doesn't crack a smile, and he's deadly serious and, I guess, I don't know about mean, but definitely cynical and kind of sharp, sharp hitting towards people and stuff.
Right. I mean, he's basically like, hey, guys, here's this topic no one's willing to go to. Let me do 10 jokes about this topic.
Right. And I think, did he have a TV show or something?
He did. I never saw it, but he's referenced it in his his performances. Yeah.
And who any other comedians that you're who's the guy who he wrote for Saturday Night Live for the longest time? He's still relatively young. He wrote the Stefan character for Bill Hader. He's really young. He just hosted Saturday Night Live recently. What is his name?
I don't know, man. I'm bad with names.
I'll think of it. But you also brought some music in because, like you said, you're a big, giant fan of music. And it took us a while to find some music that didn't have bad words in it.
Oh, man. I don't even hear them now, man.
So the first thing we're going to hear is, what's the name? I can't pronounce the name of this group.
Odyssey.
Odyssey. Oh, okay. They just spell it really funky. O-D-D-I. What, is that an I in there? O-D-D-I-S-E-E.
Yeah.
Odyssey. Is this a newer group?
No, this guy is a DC guy, actually. He's been around for a long time, putting out, pretty quality stuff. He does all his own, all his own hustle. He puts the beats together. He's someone who I can kind of identify as this guy's just a hardworking guy that puts out quality music. He's more on the underground. I saw him at 9:30 recently.
Oh, okay.
And crushed it, but
selling the CDs in front of the Metro stop.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right.
Except now social media.
Oh yeah. There's nothing physical anymore. So you're listening to WOWD Takoma Park, and this is the Thought Bowl. And that was a local musician, Odyssey, with Slow Groove. So, Alan, so you were mentioning that song is a song you might listen to sometimes before you get on stage?
Yeah, I mean, just the essence of the song, just the beats and the, ambience of every piece of it. It just sort of mellows me out, and it has some good messages on just trying to, take my time, and that's, the number one thing you got to do when you're performing stand-up is make sure to take your time. Full of nerves, a lot of excitement going on. You talk too fast, you're not going to be able to connect with the audience.
Right.
So it's kind of like a reminder, and I also like the song.
Oh, okay. And speaking of performing, how do you feel about alcohol right before you're about to hit the stage?
I feel pretty good about it. I think you got to limit it. You don't want a sloppy set. That's bad. but it definitely helps with
calming your nerves a little
calming
bit.
nerves, yeah, anxiety. It's a nice little additive you can throw in there, I think.
How about the audience drinking alcohol while you're performing?
I think the audience needs to be comfortable. So if they need some a couple drinks to get there, some food in their stomach, I'm all for that. You do kind of run the risk if they go too far, then you get like a rowdy audience. And the rowdy audience isn't always good for comedy. It's like when you get a rowdy audience, it's like a really fun but weird show. It's not great comedy, but it's like, it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's most people at their job, people aren't drinking alcohol. But I guess when you're performing stand-up, and I guess also if you're a bartender, a waiter, a waitress, you just have to deal with the fact that you're in a situation where people are drinking. And occasionally, probably more than occasionally, someone's going to be drinking a little bit more than they should be drinking. So they're going to get a little obnoxious and a little rude and, all that fun stuff.
Had this guy... I think it was like last Tuesday, a couple Tuesdays ago. There was like the Tuesday showcase that I do. It was a great show, beginning to end. We had a lot of, pretty funny people on it, just cracking jokes, great audience. Guy comes downstairs and you can see that he's like just not there. And then he's like, I don't know if he thought he was part of the show. I don't know. But like he immediately went to the bar and then he starts talking a little bit. And he was trying to talk about how stinky his feet were because he was wearing sandals. And it was like, pretty hilarious and awesome, but kind of bad for comedy. But the guy who was performing, it was Nick Hopping. He handled it like really well, so that was cool. But it was like we were so close to like the perfect game. And then,
right.
And then this guy stumbles in and was like, I wanted to kick him out, and but then the show was over and we were fine.
That's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that is a skill within itself, how to handle. I guess people call them hecklers, but I think it can be more, it could be worse than someone heckling, or it could be like a little bit like less. I mean, I guess you don't want people talking so loud that they're interrupting the set,
right? Or
talking so loud that other people can't, But you probably don't want to tell someone every 10 or 15 seconds, hey, keep your voice down.
Yeah, I mean, we do what we can, We'll go around and tell people to kindly leave or be quiet, because it's like, especially where we are, there's multiple areas to hang out. So if you're like not actually there for the show, then don't sit there and talk. That's just gonna distract people, right? Because if I'm performing, I've already got enough thoughts going on in my own head. I don't need to be hearing your conversation while I'm trying to gauge the crowd reaction while I'm trying to think of my next joke.
Right,
it's just like it's an additional layer that performers don't need.
Right. And when you're running one of these shows, are you more conscious of these things as far as like, say, like, you're running the show, but you're also doing a set. Are you more aware of what the audience is doing, if they can be kind of interrupting and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think since, I pretty much run most of the show, and I definitely have some like OCD perfectionism going into it. So, I think I'm probably a little bit more cognizant, but it's also like, since it's, my show and it's like the room that I'm running, there's all these things I'm keeping in mind, right? So I want to make sure that like the audience is having a good time, and I want to make sure the comedians are having a good time. And I want to make sure I'm having a good time, and the people that are working there are like, they're there for that live experience that you can't really get anywhere else.
Yeah, okay. And a lot of people out there might not know the difference between, say, an open mic, a showcase, and a 3 or 4 performer just show. Could you kind of break down those differences?
Yes. So an open mic is pretty much, you're going to get all sorts of caliber comedians, people who have been just like, this could be their first time doing it, or they could be a 10-year veteran just stopping in on the way, trying to like, craft and hone their material for a weekend run at the Improv or some other performance venue. And then the showcases are kind of like the next step, where it's like the quality is a little bit more vetted down. People aren't really trying new jokes, but they're people that can handle a comedic set. They're, people who can do 8 to 10 minutes, have the staying power, have the jokes, be able to react to what's going on in the audience. It's just like people who are a little bit more seasoned and, funnier, I guess. And then the professional shows is like a layer or tier higher than that. And that's pretty much where, as you mentioned, there's only a few performers. So you're going to have somebody like a host who's going to welcome people and try to get people to realize what jokes are, try to get them laughing a little bit. And then they're going to bring up, someone who's been doing it for a little while. That's going to be the feature act. And they're going to do something like 15, 20, 25 minutes of jokes. And eventually the host will bring up a headliner. And that person is usually someone who's been either like on TV or in commercials or just been doing it for a while. And they're hilarious people. So they're going to do longer sets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And which
this is my TED talk on comedy
yeah.
right now.
It was very good. It was explained very, 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 very thoroughly and very well. And talk about the role. I think you hosted in Frederick not that long ago, right?
Right.
You were the host.
Yes.
So explain the role of the host as opposed to just being one of the comedians. Like, what are you doing a little bit different as a host? Are you still doing material? Do you break up? Is the material more segmented where you're just doing like 1 or 2 minutes, or how do you approach being a host?
So the way that I approach it, so kind of just like from beginning to end, I have to like put on the sort of like host mentality. It's almost similar to like if you're hosting a dinner party or you're hosting people at your house, you kind of just have to have that like sort of energy where you're putting out that you're like welcoming people and you want people to, once again, you want to like connect with that audience. And I honestly think when you're like the host, you're almost like an extension of the audience, right? And I'll explain that in a couple seconds here. But basically, going up to the comedians, talking to them for a little bit before the show, trying to, just chat with them, get them a little bit excited for the show. And then for the set itself, I mean, I always feel like there's kind of a line. Some people will go out there and they'll start talking to the crowd. And if you can make that funny and you can make that work for 10 minutes, you can really get people who, weren't really sure about the show to be focused. Because what's more present than what's going on in the room right then in that moment?
Right.
So that's what some people do. Other people, I think it's also fine if you just go up with pretty hard-hitting jokes. I mean, you need your jokes to have pretty strong punchlines. People need to know when they're supposed to laugh.
Uh-huh.
My approach is kind of somewhere in between. I if I see something interesting in the room, I'll try to comment and I'll talk to people for a little bit. Maybe I'll bounce around, tell a joke. If someone's going to react, has like a really big reaction, maybe I go into it or maybe I just keep doing jokes. But to kind of continue the role, since, for that Frederick show, something like there were 5 or 6 comedians before the headliner. And, a couple people or at least one person did not do well. And after that comedian doesn't do well, it's kind of like the host's job to just bring people back into the show.
Right.
If someone's going to go and kind of kill the energy in the room, you gotta make people laugh again, or at the very least get people excited for the next comedian.
Right.
And it kind of sucks, I try to be a nice guy, but if the person, is ruining the energy of the show, maybe you gotta rag on them a little bit, because that's kind of to the part where I said like the extension of the audience, right? You're able to comment on like the truthful thing that people in the audience are sort of seeing. I think you have to at least acknowledge it. Maybe you don't have to rip into someone and be like, you should never do comedy again,
Right.
But just being like, well, that went well, right? Or that didn't go so well, or that's a tough act to follow. Just something to get people like, because people were like alienated a little bit during that set, So you kind of have to, I think by not acknowledging it, people are still thinking about that while the next comedian is on stage telling jokes.
So you're bringing it up, and you're closing it up. You're putting it
exactly.
You're like closing it, like, okay, this happened, and here's the next comedian. Stop worrying about what that last comedian did.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
That's I think a fantastic way to approach that. And are you if you're hosting a show, are you aware of, obviously all this is for the headliner?
Pretty much,
basically, the show is all for the headliner. Do you tailor your material a little bit? Like if there's like a super, the headliner's super raunchy, are you more likely to do something a little bit more raunchy in your hosting material?
I mean, maybe there's like a little bit of some subconscious going on, but honestly, I just try to do my best for what I think will do well in that room at that time. Because if I make those people laugh, then they're going to be like really on board for when the headliner comes on.
Right. And I remember at that set, you brought your mother to the show.
Yeah.
And it seems like your mother, she comes to most things, doesn't she?
She comes once in a while. She had some surgery recently. It's kind of like hampered her mobility. So she used to be like a once a month or a once every few weeks. Now she's more like on the quarterly schedule for coming out. But yeah, Mom comes and she's my number one fan. She loves, my jokes, even if they are, mean to her a little bit. But
right.
I've never seen someone laugh more than my mom does at like inappropriate jokes. That's the funniest thing for me. I'll see my mom sit there during someone saying something really crass and she'll fall over laughing. And like that's fun for me.
Right.
That's like pretty much kind of why I do this at the end of the day. It was, those experiences growing up where I would kind of rip on my mom a little bit, make her laugh, and then just be like, this is fun. I like this, And
I also remember that show, the headliner kind of says something.
Oh, yeah.
Was she cool with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't think she loves it.
But she knows what she's kind of getting into when she comes to a comedy show.
Yeah. So when I was first doing the shows at Beer Garden, she was always sitting in the front. Mm-hmm. And even though she doesn't have a face of like, I want to be engaged right now, I don't know if it was comics were scared, but they kept looking to her to try to get something.
Right.
So like after she went through, the crucible of dealing with that, she expects it now.
But I think, do you tell people, oh, this is my mom? So do you think?
I feel like people should know at this point.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say don't talk to my mom because she's like she's quick with it.
Right.
Her best role is honestly if she gets engaged, she might be able to burn you real quick. With like a liner or something, But nothing. She doesn't go after you, but she might throw out a good tag and you might use that someday.
Right. Oh, what did she have any acting or background in anything? She's just she's come out mainly to support you.
She just comes from a family of crazy neurotic people. That's so there's a lot of humor in that.
And that's your mother's the Jewish side of the family. And so do you have any relatives that are like super Orthodox?
No.
Not at all. Not even
all.
Close. How about any relatives that observe the Sabbath to a certain Really?
Wow. No, nothing. We're very
secular,
culturally Jewish. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think I got a few relatives that were like observe the Sabbath, and that's a commitment.
Yeah,
it's a really big. I mean, some people kind of cheat.
You're not kidding. Yeah.
Some people kind of cheat with the ovens and the elevators and stuff. But if you're like seriously committed to like not using any electricity and literally doing nothing on a Saturday, that's a pretty big commitment right there.
I do like that idea now.
Yeah,
doing nothing on a Saturday. No, man, we're so like, I don't know, so casual that, for Passover, that's like the Exodus holiday. We were slaves in Egypt, now we're free. Just for those that are listening, in case you didn't know. And basically, that's supposed to be like one of the holier holidays, and you have to kind of go through our books called a Haggadah. You go through and like read it, and you have to do like a certain amount of prayers. But like,
is that in Hebrew?
It's in Hebrew, yeah.
And enough Hebrew too?
Pretty much most people can speak Hebrew. We just don't know what it means.
Oh, okay.
But I can phonetically read it, But we're at the point where I don't know what year this happened, but we pretty much read like a Dr. Seuss equivalent of like it rhymes the entire way from beginning to end. It's like 20 minutes, and then we're like, all right, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, Jewfish, we're out, something like that. I don't know.
The abridged, super fast version of it.
Yeah.
So Passover is the... No, Passover is not the biggest Jewish holiday.
Not the biggest one.
Was it Yom Kippur? Is that?
Yeah.
And what is that the Day of Atonement? Is that
exactly?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I haven't been religious for a little while. So,
were you at one point, or?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I did the bar mitzvah thing. Mm-hmm. I thought the stories were cool and nice, but I am now my own, very questioning of beliefs person. So. Probably atheist, but I'll tell people I'm agnostic if that makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same.
Or jagnostic is what I like to say.
Yeah, I tell my real religious Southern Baptist family that I'm agnostic because they're like, oh, at least they're holding out hope. So we have some more music here. We have a Mr. Frank Ocean.
Right? I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. And this song, speaking of religion, perfect segue.
We're on the nose.
Yep. Bad Religion. Not to be confused with the band Bad Religion. So let's hear some Frank Ocean. You're listening to WOWD Tacoma Park. And that was Frank Ocean with Bad Religion. And what is it about that song that moves you?
I think just even though there's like, obviously it's Bad Religion, there's a lot of religious, undertones in it. I think it's just you can't make someone love you, I think that's like a pretty truthful thing, no matter what you want.
Right.
I think that's the part, when I hit that, maybe I was going through a time and it stuck out to me.
Oh, okay. Going through a breakup or going through
it was probably one of those things that like wasn't even a breakup, but it was like a breakup to me.
You're like still together with this person?
No.
You're like, I'm mentally checked out. She's still with it, but
no. It was just one of those like I guess like early flame on, honeymoon period. One of those that were like fall too quick and then it's over real fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was one of those situations.
Yeah, it's amazing how like songs when you're in a relationship and songs when you're not in a relationship have different touch different emotional points, like like to your like soul.
Yeah. But Frank will always get my soul.
Oh yeah. Regardless of who you're with.
Right.
So a lot has changed in the past 2 years.
Yep.
Particularly with who our president is.
Boo.
And also the Me Too movement I kind of think those two are linked. Do you think Trump being president and the Me Too movement were kind of attached to each other? Because I don't think the Harvey Weinstein thing would have broke if Hillary Clinton was president. Mainly because she was friends with Harvey Weinstein. I don't know this is totally the case, but I kind of think it was.
I think you're right.
The anger of Trump being president kind of made, I think, a lot of women really look at like what happened. Not only was, we were supposed to have the first woman president, and instead we have
someone who's admitted to and has many claims of being a sexual assaulter.
Has a trophy wife and has had many trophy wives and views sex as almost like a transaction.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard anyone link that before, but I think that makes sense. I think there was I think that might have been a big catalyst for it. I think all along there were probably people speaking out and we just weren't hearing it because there wasn't enough.
Right.
But then when you have, all the recordings of things that Trump has said bubble up to the top, and then you have, people coming out and you have Cosby and you have Weinstein,
right.
Then it's like you get a movement.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel as a male comedian that you could be viewed as not the enemy, but as not necessarily an ally at all times?
I mean, I think I'm fine with people coming to like their own conclusions on it. I don't really try to hit those topics too much on the head unless I have a joke that I think is really worth telling people.
Right.
But, I think the way that I'm an ally is like, if you don't put effort into, like, as a booker, if you don't put effort into actually, like, reaching out to women, you're not going to get women on your shows.
Right.
Especially if you have the women that are on your shows drop out at the last second. It's very easy to just get a 15 comic Joe Schmo talking about their underwhelming sex life for an hour and a half for like the open mic stuff.
Right.
So I like to think, in those cases, or women are funny and there's a lot of great comedians in the area, and I think people want to hear that. So I think that's kind of my strategy for trying to be an ally. It's not necessarily what I'm saying.
Right.
Just giving the platform.
Have you been to a show where a male comic has kind of said something that rattled a female in the audience, or someone has said something?
I mean, so the thing that I have to just kind of keep in mind is like you have comedians that are like all over the, either spectrum of, not even that like the mentally challenged spectrum or whatever, but you have people who are, you have like mental, you have people that have problems. We've got some like mental
you mean
illness.
Comedians?
Yes.
Comedians have problems?
Yes, I know. This is groundbreaking the first time we've heard it. But, you have people that aren't all there. Then you have people who are super angry. So, like, there's definitely, a very messy dish at the end of the day, right? So I've been at shows where a guy has literally told a rape joke and brought up a girl comedian next. So there's been like that level of like ignorance that is still going to probably exist for a little while. I don't know. Hopefully it's
phased out, or just realize it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to be given the chance to learn from those kind of mistakes. So hopefully that particular person has like, realized that maybe that wasn't the right time to do it, or maybe they shouldn't have done it because it wasn't a funny joke. I don't know. But those situations are still definitely happening.
And you talked about mentally challenged people. Are you basically talking about like someone like on the autistic spectrum? Do you see that a lot with comedians? Because I know Jerry Seinfeld has said, like, I've never really thought about it, but he's like, I might be on, because all those things they talk about, like not picking up social cues,
right,
and not really paying attention to the vibe. And
I've thought of it for myself, but I really think it's just high level neuroses. I think that's like where I fall short. But yeah, I mean, you have a blend of people who are autistic on the spectrum, but you do have people who are just like. We also get a lot of recovering addicts, so there's just like. There's a combination of just like people going through a hard time, and this is like
therapy,
how they're going to do it. This is one of the things that's going to help them, and I think we can support that, but it's not always going to be a great product on the performance.
Right, and you kind of have to learn from their, learn from their mistakes, like like everyone else does.
Exactly. So I think like having a really high level of scrutiny for something that somebody said on an open mic on a Monday is not necessarily like helpful in any way. Right. But we should also find a way to deter some of the subject matter, because it kind of just goes, you were talking about Lenny Bruce, right? Lenny Bruce, white comedian, he was saying the N-word.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Richards did not go so well.
Right. And I think Michael Richards attempted to, a couple things about the Michael Richards thing, he had white people cheering him when he first like said it.
Okay.
Like he felt like, I think, empowered for like the first 30 seconds.
Oh man.
And then he realized what was turning, and he did try to make it a Lenny Bruce thing, but he just didn't have the
couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, just couldn't pull it off.
But like that's probably, just part of like as we progress as humans, there are things that like change, right? Like for instance, like Delirious.
Oh yeah.
That first like, 10 minutes it's almost hard to listen to now because you're like, I'm not allowed to laugh at these things anymore. This isn't the 80s,
Right.
So I think but I think that's fine. I think, I think it can shift from being a thing where we're just like straight up picking on people the entire time. It's just like the way that I think we're changing as people.
Oh yeah.
In society. So I think you can't just like ignore that.
Yeah, and I think Eddie Murphy has acknowledged that. Like, kind of sounds outrageously homophobic. There was like 10 minutes of that. Just starting with Mr. T,
right,
and ending with playing tennis with someone.
It's like, let me start with homophobia and go on to domestic violence.
Right. And I think it's hard. How do you view those things in any artistic format? I kind of like, I guess selfishly, it's like. It kind of depends on how much I really, really like someone, and how much I can justify like certain things. Like I don't really like Ted Nugent, so I'm really good at like being able to like, oh, he's an admin supporter of the NRA, and I can not like him and feel good.
Right.
Someone like Jimmy Page, who I love Led Zeppelin, the fact that he was dating a 15-year-old, it's kind of, I mean, that's kind of been an issue, but an on again, off again issue. But it's something in my mind where it's like, I really like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm cool with that, but I kind of.
You're turning a blind eye.
I know. I think in a way I'm
you're
like.
part of the problem.
I know. It's like, how much do I like someone? Am I willing to. Like Bill Cosby, like I was never a giant fan of Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
So I'm perfectly fine with saying, like, I'm not going to listen to a Cosby album, or I'm not going to watch, not watch The Cosby Show.
Yeah. I mean, similar thing happened with before him, there was MJ, right? Similar thing with him, and then obviously you have Kanye now, where it's like, oh man, can't listen to any of your newer stuff because that's where some of the thoughts were going. If you're coming out and saying these things, like,
I'm not sure about what's going on with.
I mean, he's just a crazy person.
Could he just be I've heard like this is like his performance piece. Him like supporting Trump.
But I think that's giving him
too
more
much
credit than
yeah.
I want. You know.
I could see if it was someone like Common or Childish Gambino, I think they would more likely do that because their art is kind of, you know, not deeper than Kanye, but a little bit more multi-leveled than, you know, what Kanye is doing.
Right.
But or just not giving Kanye enough credit. But
I mean, I honestly think Kanye just sits around and then has a crazy thought, and he's like, "I have the biggest platform."
Right.
What if Bill Cosby was innocent? You know, that's
right,
like
right.
That was what he did beforehand.
Yeah.
So
just Kanye being Kanye.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more shows coming up after this. Directly after this, we have Roadside Attractions with Brian spinning a variety of vintage rock and roll, country, blues, and folk from Off the Beaten Path. From 6 to 8 p.m., we have Roots and Wing Radio with Becky, Reed, and Chris. 3 Takoma Park friends share tunes that stretch the roots of Americana into the music of today. And we have programming 24 hours a day here at Takoma Radio. You can either catch us on 94.3 FM if you're within 7 miles of Takoma Park, or takomaradio.org across the world. So before we get out of here, Alan, if people want to find out about... so what is your company, your production comedy company called?
I call it Sidley Standup. Sidley's my last name, so Sidley Standup. I've got a website, sidleystandup.com. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under those names. And, you know, we pretty much do weekly shows at the Tyson's Beer Garden over in Tyson's Corner. Around 8 o'clock start time on Monday for the open mic, Tuesday on the showcase, and we do professional shows once in a while every couple Thursdays. So just keep an eye out for those. Those are fun times too.
All right. So thank you, Alan, for stopping by and
thank you, Pete,
giving your TED Talk on comedy. And we're gonna end this show with Will Smith, and this is, how do you pronounce that? Potness. Oh, okay.
Friendship.